you Viltrumite scum, and welcome to Last Week On. My name is Adam Straughan, and we are back covering Invincible, Season 3, Episode 7, What Have I Done? But before we get into that, I have a very special returning guest. You already know his accolades, so I'm not going to go through them all again. You already know him by now. You've checked out all of his content by now. But it's my pleasure to have back on the podcast talking about this bloody good episode, Mr. Ian Carlos Crawford. How you doing, Ian?
Hi, good. Thanks for having me.
Of course, absolutely. Ian, fucking hell. Like, this episode, right? Like, so much happens in this episode. Like, 3 days worth of stuff in one episode, right?
I really feel like they were like, oh, Ian and Adam said that they wanted more of an episode, like with stuff happening, not a filler episode. Well, here you go.
Literally. They were like, okay, oh, you want this? Here's like 3 seasons worth of shit in one episode.
Yeah.
But you know what? Like, just when we were saying like the stakes, like earlier on in the season were like really raised, right? With like, you know, Oliver suddenly, and he's really unpredictable. Although I will say I actually do quite like him in this episode quite a lot. But yeah, like, you know, we were saying, oh my God, the stakes are raised there. The things between Mark and Cecil, like the stakes are really getting high. And then we had a bit of a lull in like the last couple of episodes where like, you know, they were okay, but like they were like just normal episodes and a really great show. As we said, Powerplex was like a villain. Like,
he still annoyed me in this episode, I will say.
Oh my God, the second time we see him and he's still blasting, I'm like,
I was like, my dude, like,
read
bigger
the
things.
world.
Like, yeah.
Exactly. Like, look at what is happening around you right now. Let's focus on just Mark, the one person who's trying to save the world against all the other ones. Discuss.
Yeah.
Ugh. But yeah, overall, what were your kind of general thoughts of this episode before we go into it, Ian?
I think this might be my favorite episode so far this season. I think I loved it. I just loved it. It was, and I think I've said this before, like, with Invincible, sometimes it's like when they're fighting, it's almost like horror movie chase scene thrilling, because it's like, you know, someone's head could be like popped in any punch they're throwing. So I was like, I was eating lunch. I was like watching while eating lunch and taking notes. And like, I definitely had a few moments where it was, I like reacted as if it was like a jump scare in a horror movie, but it was just because I was like, so yeah, no, I loved this episode. It was, and it also, and I feel like we've been saying this a lot, but it was like, not just a return to form, but it felt very comic booky, which I want you to know in my head, I hear that word with your accent. Like I hear comic booky.
Yes.
Like I say it with your accent in my head.
That's my impact in life. If I leave anything after my death, it's that.
And so like, it felt very comic booky, but also still being Invincible, where like people's bones are getting broken and you see like a lot of blood and people are dying and their heads are exploding. So yeah, no, I this was like very good superhero storytelling, I thought.
Yeah, you know what, Ian, like just to build on what you said there, like, I mean, I absolutely agree. This has been my favorite so far. It's like the most as well. Like, I love that it's completely dipped into like the mythology of like, you know, Invincible in general, like seeing all of these other ones. And it's taken like the best of what we've seen in the last 2 seasons and really pushed it up. So like, you know, we were saying the multiverse stuff didn't really like massively work for us all that much in the last season. Again, that's a lot of it. It's like fatigue with like the MCU and everything like that. But, you know, and it's not the fault of Invincible, right? It's just doing what was written prior to all of this. But still, we were like, you know, we're a bit like done with multiverses. But I love the way it was used here, where it's not about the multiverses, it's about the people that have been brought through. Do you know what I mean?
It was really like besides the point. That,
exactly. Right. But yeah, I agree. I loved this episode. And I think for me, I've been waiting for so long for Invincible. Like season 1, like I know it's like the introduction to the show, to the comics and everything, but like the end of episode 1 of season 1, when like, you know, Omniman kills all of the Guardians and you're like, holy fuck, like what is going on? Like you and I are saying, like our jaws literally hit the floor and went through the floor. Like I've been waiting for that again. And it feels like this is the point when I've gotten back to that. Do you know what I mean? That level of holy fuck. Because like at any point we could lose anyone. We do lose people, and like a major character, which we'll get into, I'm absolutely devastated over. But yeah, this stuff for me, I'm like, this is it firing on all cylinders, like absolute peak here. And I loved it. I really loved this.
Yeah, I want everyone to know Adam texted me at like 9 a.m. to be like, did you watch yet? And I was like, oh God, no. I was like, I haven't watched yet. And you were like, well, buckle up. And I was like, oh no.
Yeah.
So I was like, in my head, I thought it was going to be Eve. I'm glad it was not Eve, but like, I totally was like, oh no, someone we like dies. Oh God, who is it? And my head was like, it's Eve, but thankfully it was not, but still sad at who it was.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like, I mean, the thing is, well, like me sending you a text out, Ian, because we love so many characters, it could have been Eve, it could have been Debbie, it could have been, you know, Rex, who obviously turns out to be, spoiler alert. Like, it could have been so many of these different people. Like, and you know, we adore Rex, and I think it's done the great thing of it's really built up Rex in this season to be like a much more integral, more interesting, really endearing
Yeah.
character. So we've gone along with that ride exactly as the show is intended. So that's why his death has been so much more impactful. Like
Yeah.
if this was like season one Rex, we'd be like, who gives a fuck? Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah, no, I agree. And like I think we said this last season when he gets shot in the head that we were both like,
Yes.
"Oh, wait, suddenly we love him and I'm upset." And like I didn't realize I had gotten to that point until it was like we thought he might be dead.
Hmm.
So yeah, this was like the not fake out, fake out. Although I still feel like because we didn't see his body like mangled, oftentimes that's still that can come back in Invincible. So I'm hoping, but
Mm. I know. I'm kind of like that as well. And I'm like, even like as I was watching the episode, I was like, well, they better give Rex a funeral. Like, like
yeah,
that better
yeah,
happen. And like the fact that that didn't, obviously, because even though, Kate got one and she wasn't dead. So like, I'm like, but I don't know. I'm hoping and praying because I do love Rex. But at the same time, and you and I have spoke about this before, Ian, like, I don't like when a death is undercut with
yeah,
suddenly, oh, they're suddenly back, for
yeah,
reasons. Somehow Palpatine returned, it's that type of thing. So I hope like, if they do stick with it, I completely respect the show for doing it. I'll miss Rex to bits because I love the character. But if he does come back in some interesting way, I think fucking Angstrom did,
I know. And his head
then
was literal mush. Like,
can we talk about, what, let's get into the opening because that's where we
okay.
start, right? Because I was like, what? So like the episode opens where, we go back to the flashback end of season 2 where Mark kills Angstrom. And like the whole time I'm watching, he's like gurgling and making noises. Like when Mark's obviously walking away, having like his crisis in his head. I'm like, how the hell is this man still alive? Like, how? Like, he has teeth up here, his eyes are over here. Like, you can see through his head. I'm like,
His
what?
brain is like splattered. Like,
Like literally, and then he's just like, I'm like, come on, just die. But obviously we see like, he does like the magic hand thing. He opens a portal, shoves his hand through, and we get an introduction to these characters called the Technicians, who obviously pull him through, and then they obviously build him back up. But I will say, like, overall, like, yes, Angstrom did come back, but I think I said to you in the last episode, Ian, like Angstrom for me here is very much like plot device. Like,
yeah, yeah,
he's bringing us to the other Invincibles, which is the most important part of this whole episode, right? And although
yeah,
like Mark does have that face off with him later on, he's a plot device for Oliver, later on, and he's a plot device for these other characters. So I do like him in that way. He's not the big bad. He's never going to be. Like for me, like it's the same as like Powerplex was never going to be the big bad. He's like a plot device. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying?
yeah. Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah. So then, we get that. And then obviously we go to months later. Angstrom brings all of the Invincibles to Earth, basically to destroy and kill people, basically to make everyone fear Mark. That's his whole intent. That's what
Right.
he's wanted. Very similar to Powerplex, to be fair. That's what Powerplex wanted as well, which is why he kind of latches onto that when we see that later on. And then we got a very quick title card as well. This is probably the fastest, I believe. It was like this whole opening I loved because it was like bam, bam, bam. We don't need a long dragged out thing of Angstrom's
Yeah,
back. Let's follow him. It's just right. Go title card and the black and yellow are the colors of Sinister Invincible. So I did like this as an opening.
yeah, yeah. And I agree with you. Like, fine, if Angstrom's alive, I don't need a lot of plot about it. It's like, sure, fine,
Yeah.
whatever. Like, I don't need him like monologuing and whatever. It's like, yeah, just like wrap that up real quick that he's back and get to the like fun parts.
Right, get to the juicy stuff.
Yeah,
The whole time though, I was like, "Ooh, is this when like Omniman and Alan's gonna like come crashing down at some point?" But we
I
know
did think that.
obviously that's gonna be the last episode, right, when they come back. But
Is there one? It's one more left,
one
really?
more and that's it. One
Oh
more.
gosh.
Yeah, it's wild, right? Like, God. And that last episode, like, if it's going to be over an hour long, I kind of feel like it has to be like an hour and a half at least. Like, there's so much still to do. And especially the way this episode ends, like,
Yeah.
whoa. But we'll get to that. But oh man, oh man. Okay. So the episode is split up into like 3 days, which actually, as Ian and I were saying before recording, it's paced really well. And I think that's one of the strengths of this episode is
Mhm.
that an episode like this could be so chaotic, right? Where there is so much going on and there's so much battle, death, everything. And it could very well be a case of where you easily get lost in kind of the chaos. But I think this was really nicely paced out. What did you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. There was like the only moment that even threw me off was the moment with the mummy. So I was like, wait, what? Oh, okay. We're going back to the mummy.
That bloody joke that comes up in every season. I mean, we'll get to that very briefly just to mention it, but yeah, again, like nice to see that. No.
Yeah.
Um,
Because at first, because that Mark just it has like the same old costume Mark had, just without
yes.
the eyes. So I was like, wait, is this a flashback? Like, because it was just
Mm,
like him falling. But
right. And then
that's
hold on.
literally the only thing that threw me off. Yeah.
Right, yeah. And then like, oh, he's fighting a mortal. Oh, wait, no, it must be another one. Yeah, I know, right? And it's just, I mean, there is like a funny moment in there, but again, I'm not like laughing, ha ha. I'm like, I appreciate that
It's like,
anyway.
yeah, it's more of a like, oh, that's funny.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But then, oh, some people find that hilarious. Yep.
Yeah.
So day one opens where we got Mark and Eve basically there. Mark still feels guilt over everything that's happened with Powerplex, and Eve's basically trying to reassure him and say, like, look, like that's not your guilt to carry. Like, I understand what you're saying, but again, this is a man who basically needed a lot of help. Like, that's not up
Yeah.
to you to shoulder that, Mark. And then she cancels her plans. Like straight away, she gets on her phone and cancels her plans. They had dinner plans with her parents, and I like as well that she tries to like back up that by saying, oh well, you haven't met my parents. Like they're absolutely terrible. And I love when Mark's like, you don't think I understand about terrible parents? Like,
Yeah.
read the room, Eve. But it's kind of what you were saying before, Ian. Like, you and I were talking about this, and we were like, why has she got such an affinity with her parents? Like, like, and I guess for me, is this her dodging having the conversation with Mark, where she has to try and justify to him why she's going back to them because they're so terrible?
I mean, I guess because also I was like, I know that she was doing it because it's like, great, I don't want Mark to have to sit with my parents because they suck.
Right.
But also, like, I kind of do get it because it is like, oh, he's really depressed. My dad is awful and he's going to
Mm,
be like, her dad would have been a dick.
right.
And that is, it wouldn't exactly have made Mark feel better. So, like, it wasn't totally out of the realm of like reasonable things to do, but also we know it's because she's like, just like kind of putting off him meeting them.
Yeah. Yeah, actually that makes a lot more sense the way you've explained it. Probably like Mark's mental state right now is not prepared to meet like her dad, Adam, I believe that's his name, who is the biggest dick. And like even
Yeah.
later on when you see him in the hospital, like, what a dick.
I thought that was going to be like, oh, we're going to get that her parents are like nicer now. But nope, her dad is still a dick.
Hmm. But I do like, and we'll get to that in a bit, but I do like the conversation he has with her
Yeah.
mother,
Mom, yeah.
because that's a throwback to the Adam Eve episode as well when she mentions her friend, and that's you and I saw that, Ian. Like that was her friend she had in the treehouse that she made. So I did like that little throwback to that. But yeah, that conversation was really cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, so obviously, Eve cancels those plans. We then see, obviously, that, everything's interrupted because the Invincibles are all over the world destroying cities. And man, shit is getting real fast. It's not even just like, focused in like an American city. We see later on, it's like all over the world globally.
Yeah.
Which is why like this is what I mean about the scale of like this episode alone isn't just like focused on like the city and Mark and like the Guardians. This is a global thing where even Cecil's like, fuck, like this is a big deal. But yeah, we see Rex and Eve very briefly. So obviously Rex and Eve. Rex and Shrinking Ray. I've literally got
So
Rex and Eve.
during
Yes.
this scene, because I come from the school of Buffy, as do you, I was like, oh, Shrinking Ray's totally gonna die. But I had it reversed because I was like,
Hmm.
oh, this is like a happy couple moment. She's totally gonna die. But I was thinking like because Rex couldn't die because he's a beloved secondary character, like the second outside of like Mark and Eve, it's like Rex is the character I love the
Yeah.
most. Um, and I feel like the show also has made him like the second main character, like
Hmm.
after them. So I really was like, oh, she's gonna die because she's not someone we care about that much, but we care about Rex and he's gonna be sad and
Hmm.
that'll be sad. But I underestimated the sadness of
Oh yeah. And you'd be right to think that because we've seen that before. Like, do you know what I mean? We've seen it in the show before. And like obviously, you and as you said, Ian, like we come from the world of Buffy where we've seen this type of thing before, right? But yeah, like just this little buildup of like the whole time her storyline has been like, oh, I'm retiring, I'm leaving this whole thing behind. And like, yes, Rex was the one who was gonna like he jumps into action here. He's like, no, you stay, like, and gives her a kiss goodbye and off he goes. But at the same time, like that would have been the angle, like an obvious, more obvious show, but that would have been the angle. Like Rex, loses the girl that's been interested in him and like has been building a friendship and a relationship with, and suddenly she's gone, and now we're gonna get like a darker Rex, but
yeah.
I kind of love that the show just went nah and did the daring thing because fuck, it just made his death so much more impactful.
Yeah. Yeah. My problem is like, and I think I said this probably every other episode this season. The one thing that was like the glaring issue in this episode is Mark's strength.
Hmm.
Like, I feel like we're still like all over the place with it because it made zero sense to me that how sometimes like I don't know, it was like sometimes they can deliver one punch that's a knockout, sometimes not.
Right.
Sometimes the punch can go through someone's head, sometimes not.
Mm.
But then like Mark and Oliver both had to hold down Powerplex at the end, and I was like, what? I feel like
Right.
one of them could be like bloop and he's knocked out.
And last episode, like he grabbed him into a hug, right? And like held him until he used all of his abilities. So yeah, I get that. But at the same time, I think Mark does have some really strong like strength moments in this. Like when he's been blasted by all of the orbs by Angstrom, and then like he manages to not push himself into like, the portal and like blasts them off and then grabs him at the end. But I know what you're saying. Like he's like, whether he's holding his punches or whether he is been knocked back and like for some reason isn't as strong as what he normally is,
Yeah,
it is a little
yeah.
bit inconsistent. So yeah, I do get that. But I do like as well, Mark, like this is the first time really in this episode when he's like, even when he says to Angstrom, like, you give me no choice, and like he's like, well, Oliver's right. Like all of me saying this sounds insane, but Oliver was right in that moment,
It was.
100%.
It was.
Yeah. But like, as you said, like Mark's strength, like even in this next scene, like when he goes to the prison and he fights, like I've got random names for each Invincible character, so bear with me. This one's called Mohawk Invincible.
That's
But
what I
like,
put him down as. Yeah.
wait till you find out what I've called the next one, Ian. Jesus Christ. But yeah, he goes to the prison and like here, like, like, so Mohawk, Invincible's fighting all of, he's basically destroyed. He's leveled that prison. We see loads of prisoners dead and everything. But then we see these new characters of Bolt, Kid Thor, and Knockout. A couple of these we have seen before. Kid Thor and Knockout are actually married in the comics, so they're like a couple. But as well, like obviously they see like, our Mark for the purposes of understanding who I'm going to call Mark. Everybody else I'll refer to as Invincible, like, and then a variation. Yes, so they see our Mark and they think, oh no, it's another one. And then they start beating the fuck out of him. Mark gets his ass handed to him here by these these three heroes. And then Powerplex jumps in.
I was worried, and I'm so glad we didn't. I was like, is this whole episode gonna be everyone thinking the like our
Right.
Mark is bad and like him? And I did not want that. And I was so glad we quickly are like, oops, sorry, you're the real Mark. We're not mad at you. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
thank you.
I know, because like a lesser show would have done that, and it's like, oh my god, like that's like such a story trope that we didn't need right now, and
Right.
like that could have, as you said, Ian, that could have been the whole episode, and it's like, who is the real Mark? And it's like, oh, come on, like get to the, and I'm pleased we didn't go down that route. Like I have faith in the
Yeah.
writing that I didn't go there, thank God. But yeah, so. It does look like he gets his ass kicked, but as you said, this does get wrapped up really quickly, kind of off screen, where like later on they are just like, "Oh yeah, you're the real Mark. Okay, we'll take on this guy. You go and sort out whatever." Obviously, Debbie and Oliver. I do like this scene actually with Debbie and Oliver. So
I
like,
did too. Yeah.
yeah, like so they're at home, they're watching the news, they see what's going on, and Oliver straight away is like, "Right, shit's getting real. I've got to go and help." And like Oliver is right, like the world
Yes.
needs anyone superpowered right now. And although Debbie initially is hesitant, she's like, no, no, like, I can't let you go. That's the mother in Debbie, right? But then she very quickly comes to her senses and is like, look, like, the world like needs my boys right now. So, she's like, look, okay, I understand, but go and find Mark. I'm going to go to a safe place. But yeah, I think Debbie was right to very quickly change her mind, right?
And like I understood why the mother in her is like,
Yeah.
no, because like he is a child that is, I don't know what age, like 10 or something. Like he is a child, but also like he is as strong as Mark. So like no one else is. So it's like, yeah, we kind of do need this 10-year-old to go punch a bunch of people.
Right, exactly. And like to be fair, like, even like, we said in 2 episodes ago, I think it was, when like we saw Oliver handle the bullies, and then what Oliver does in this episode, this for me is like the best version of Oliver. And it's
Yes.
showing that he is learning from Mark, from Debbie in the right way, So
Yeah.
like, I'm pleased that, I know that you wanted to throw Oliver into a volcano, Ian, which absolutely justified after what he did to the Mulder twins, and like how he kept bringing up how he idolizes his dad. But at the same time, I love that we're seeing this side of him, and we needed to, right?
Yes.
In order for us
Yes.
to endear ourselves to him, we needed this episode and this Oliver.
Yeah, because if it was just Oliver always being annoying and always like I just it wouldn't have been sustainable for me as like
Yeah.
a character that we see so often.
Hmm. Yeah. No, we definitely need this. And I love this version of Oliver. Like I genuinely do. And it just gets me interested for when we get the last episode, when obviously Alan and Omniman do come back down. how Oliver is going to be with them. So I'm super interested to see
Right.
that. But yeah, we go to the GTA and Donald and Cecil are in an absolute shit show. Like Donald literally looks like the Terminator with like his skin ripped off. Cecil's covered in blood. And they're just like, oh my God, like fucking hell, the GTA has been completely destroyed as well. And then even Donald says like, oh, there's been 18 like variants of Invincible spotted. And Cecil's just like, oh my God. But I like this when he's like, right, okay, send a call out to absolutely
Yeah.
anybody who can come and help us, whether it's this universe, whether it's another Earth, anyone, we need them here yesterday.
We're and I do like also Donald even specifies like what are we gonna do because like I think he says like the engineering department or whatever
Yes.
has been blown up. So we can't even like make things because that part of our base is not there anymore.
Right.
Were all the heroes we see after he says that were all them people from the comics?
Yeah.
Yeah, I figured.
And some more major, some more minor roles. So, like those characters I mentioned, like Bold, Kid Thor, Knockout, like the only reason I knew they were married is because the comic. Like, so I've seen them before. But there were some heroes that I've like seen a quick glance of.
Okay.
And some of them I'm like, is that? But yeah, but there is one hero that is missing, Ian. So, obviously, Invincible is Image Comics, and there's another hero from Image Comics who is in the comic very briefly, but is in there. But for rights reasons, they couldn't get from the show, and it's Spawn.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so like when he puts the call out for all of the heroes, like even Spawn arrives like as part of the fight as well, which is like it's one of those cool things like in comic books when we see like crossovers, like Buffy and Angel, like perfect example. Like when there's a crossover moment, it's so good for that. And like we had Invincible earlier on, for all that, you know, intents and purposes, they didn't call him Spider-Man. That was Spider-Man, you know.
Right.
So I like this. Like it's very comic booky. Obviously, as I said, like Robert Kirkman himself said, like it was an absolute nightmare to try and make it work for like rights reasons and everything like that, even for like a 5 second cameo.
Mhm.
But it's cool that something like that happens in the comics, you know?
Yeah, I'm looking this up because I'm like, ooh, what heroes? It looks like there were some other heroes
Hmm.
from Image Comics. Because Image Comics always had that weird thing, um, where like it kind of was a shared universe with their
Yeah.
comics, but not quite.
Hmm.
Um, I remember when most of Image folded into DC, they did like a universe ending plot for Image Comics, and it was like even funny seeing like who they included and who like wasn't included, like of the
Right.
Image heroes, like Invincible was not in those comics.
Right.
um and like yeah, I always that there was an episode an issue of, do you remember the Image comic Gen 13?
Yes. Yeah.
I think it was, I can't remember what characters, but maybe it was the two lesbian characters. So there was a marriage, and
Right.
at the marriage it was like they showed character like R2D2 and C3PO were there, and I remember there being an interview where they said like they're in the background just enough that key parts of them weren't shown. So that
Right.
way it was like, well, they're not really those characters.
That's
And I
hilarious.
always think about that. It was like the artist who drew it was like, I had to be very careful where each cameo was standing. So that way important parts were covered up that they could be said to like not be those characters.
That's so interesting. Like, and like that's cool. It's like a wink and a nod, right? For like,
Yeah.
well, we're not actually drawing R2D2 and C3PO, but the readers know who we're talking about. And that's kind of like that leans into like last season as well. Like when we saw like Spider-Man,
Yeah. The
you
knots.
know,
Yeah.
they didn't mention him by name and he looked a little bit different, but we knew who they were talking about. You know what I mean? So that's pretty cool. Like I do like that. But that's hilarious. But yeah, so as I say, like we missed out on having Spawn, everyone's favorite.
That would have been pretty cool.
It would have been awesome just to see, even for like 3 seconds, just fly past the screen. It would have been pretty cool. But yeah, just as a heads up, when people do go and read the comics, like yeah, you'll see Spawn popping up, and obviously, as Ian said there, you can go and check out the other heroes that do rock up. Yeah, so that's kind of like day one, and then we go to day two. So shit has not gotten any better. In fact, it's gotten pretty much worse. But we do see all of the heroes arriving, and I do like this where it's everyone, all hands on deck. Like, let's go, let's get everyone across the world, let's fight, 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 and basically take on all of the different Invincibles. And now this is what I was talking about with Oliver. I love this, where like, you know, Oliver, you and I have said this, Ian, like he would have been a lesser written character if he was just like going on a bloodbath and just like ripping people
Yeah.
apart,
Yeah.
which very much looked like he was going to go down that path. But then he's helping people. Like he's lifting the building off that guy straight away so he can run back to his family. And I love this. Like this is him learning from his brother how to be a superhero, which isn't all just fight, 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 fight and kill bad guys, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I mean, I almost kind of it's weird how quickly we made Oliver not annoying. I
Mm.
and I almost appreciate that. It's like I didn't need a whole episode to see like,
Right.
it's like, yeah, just have him be like, I need to help. This is what I need to do to help. Great.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? Fair enough. Like, you know, there are still bigger things that are going to happen. And obviously, Oliver, you know, what I like now is that he's, you know, I think I said earlier on, like he was being presented a bit as a plot device, but now they're really starting to
Yes.
flesh him out and give him his own space. So like later on, when like he's the one that like punches, like, and he like, I love when he, is it Angstrom? Like he punches later on and like
I think
knocks him
so.
down. And like that was so cool. I'm like, yes. And like when Oliver's talking to Mark,
Or
like
Powerplex. It's Powerplex.
Powerplex,
It's
yes,
yeah,
he
yeah.
punches Powerplex. That's right. Fucking love that. That's
Yeah.
exactly what Powerplex deserved in that moment. Because he's saving his brother, but he's not going for the killing blow. He's helping his brother fight. You know what I mean? So he's not like ripping Powerplex's head off
Yeah.
or like punching through people again. But yeah, this version of Oliver and the way they're fleshing him out, I love it, and I'm here for it.
I was a little annoyed when it was like, Oliver, don't assume this. We know there are multiple marks on
Yeah.
this earth. Why are you like, be a little bit more careful? Because I was like I said, I was worried for every character. So I was like, oh no, I don't want Oliver to die and that like send Mark off the deep end. Debbie
Right.
doesn't deserve that. Like every character when they encountered like evil Mark, I was like worried they were gonna die.
Yeah, yeah. And you're right, like, you know, when he looks up and sees him, he's like, oh, Mark, and like goes to see him, it's like the bug-eyed Mark is what I've got him down as. And like he looks and he's like, oh, hey, you. And like obviously you think, oh fuck. Like, because he could tear like Oliver in half in 10 seconds.
Yeah. Or
Like
like punch
literally.
through him or whatever. Yeah.
Honestly. And then we get Mark and Eve. They basically see who I've called Orville Peck Invincible, who has the face covering down to here. You know, he is fighting. They obviously go down to help. And then we get this random joke, which we mentioned before, which is Kahar, the Crypt of Kahar, the like, you know, mummy guy. And like I just put here, the joke returns. So he tries to basically like Immortal's fighting one of the Invincibles, the guys Ian said who hasn't got like the eyes covering. He like lands, he tries to latch onto him. He's like, oh no, another worthy guy, like finally another man. It grabs on, and I love like that Invincible's just like, what the hell, like get off, and like just brushes him
Yeah.
off and flies away. And as I was saying to Ian earlier, like Chloe Bennett, like voicing one of these characters, like literally Agents of Shield. Chloe Bennett is used for this 10-second scene. Like what?
Weird. Yeah.
Wild.
I mean, the show, like, Amazon has a budget and they use it with this. I feel like they like use all their budget for like other shows on this show with getting famous voice actors to do the smallest parts.
Right. Like literally it's wild. And then like, yeah, I mean, like even like Simu Liu, like we've had him as well as like Kate's brother, and like he hasn't been in a great load, and that's
Yeah.
like an A-lister right there. Like that's wild.
Like, I feel
Um,
like you have to pay a Marvel actor a lot of money to do something like this.
Absolutely, Jesus. Um, but yeah, so then we kind of cut back to Mark and Eva fighting Orville Peck, and Invincible is his actual name, who arrives as well. I thought he looked actually really cool, you know, like in Omniman's outfit, but it was
Yeah.
Mark. I thought that was a really cool stylistic choice. But during this fight, Ian, like, oh, so like, you know, obviously Mark's getting the shit kicked out of him, and like Eve's like standing her ground for a little bit with like, you know, throwing out the, you know, all of her like barriers and everything that she does. And I'd still like to see the extent of Eve's powers. Like, I know we keep saying this, but like, how powerful is she? Because like, she's making buildings. She can build like a tree house. Like, she can make gold. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, and then she can make a prison cell to lock like, you know, like Simu Liu's character in as well, Multipole. So I'm like, I want to find out how powerful she really is.
Yeah. This scene made me nervous because I was like, even before she, like when he was like, get out of here. And she was like, no, I was like, wait, but can she stand her own on these? It feels
Yeah.
like maybe she could from what we've seen, but also like, I know if it comes to hand combat, an evil Mark can best anyone but Mark, right?
Right.
So I was like a little bit like, should I be worried? But then I was progressively getting more and more worried. Um, and because the show loves to torture Mark, I really was worried we were gonna kill her. Like I was really worried. When it
Massively.
when the one like breaks her leg and throws her,
Oof.
I genuinely that was when I gasped, like as if it was a horror movie kill. Like I was like, because I thought like that was the like I was like, oh, this is gonna be the end of her, and she's gonna get like brutally ripped apart or some shit. I'm glad it didn't happen.
Right, same. And like, why is it always the women around Mark that this happens to? Like
You know?
Debbie last season, when like her wrist was fully split open by Angstrom, and then we have Eve as well with like her leg fully broken, and like Jesus Christ. But yeah, I'm pleased as well. Like I'm just, I love Eve. I love her so much. I love the relationship that she's building with Mark as well now. Like, she is the right person for Mark to be dating. Do you know what I mean? Like, they balance each other out really well. But yeah, I'm just like, I want to see more of, like, I want to learn more. Even though we had that episode about Eve, I want to learn more about, like, how powerful are those powers? Like, how long do they last? Like,
Yeah.
when she makes something, is it there indefinitely? Is she still like controlling that? Like, or is it just done and dusted?
And did I say, I think I might have brought this up. I can't remember if it was during recording or post or pre-recording, but I just kept thinking again of that one What If comic from Marvel where it was like Deadpool kills the Marvel universe and it's like one of the last people is Invisible Woman and she creates a bubble in his head that just
Mm,
explodes his head, but because he regenerates, he still kills her. But like I was like, now would be a good time for Eve to try that out by like growing something in these guys' brains and just like
right.
boop. Um, because it feels like that's not outside of her realm of powers, right?
No, we're like it feels like we're like two steps away from that happening every single time. But
Yeah, yeah,
I know because she relies on the barriers quite often, right? And like she relies on like trapping and like protecting, like putting like a barrier up as opposed to like, making, I don't know, because she can make like spears or darts and like throw them at people, right? But she seems like more on the defense quite often.
yeah, yeah. Because
So
right, I mean, we don't like you said, she made that treehouse, which was like a working, livable place, and then she made the bars of gold. So it's like, seems like she can make anything.
yeah, so like I don't know, but and this isn't a slight on her, it's just more of like an
Yeah, I know.
intrigue. Like
Yeah,
I'm just intrigued like what the extent of her powers are and like how far she can, like, is she like wonder level where she can like make a whole town, or like,
right.
or like, is she holding back because she is more of a defensive type fighter? Like, I don't know, it's interesting because we never see her like really punch people. It's always more like with her powers, whereas Mark is more like the brawn, and I guess she's more the brain.
Yeah,
But yeah, I don't know. Just, but I love to see it. Like, I love to see the way she uses her powers. Like, I love to see that in the fights. And I will say, like, the fights in this episode, like the way they were choreographed, I thought were brilliant. Like,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
absolute. Especially that later on with Angstrom, like with all the like the orbs flying around him and all of that. That was really cool. And like, yeah, like just all of it just worked really for me in this episode.
Yeah, no,
Um,
I agree.
yeah, right. Oh my God, Ian, the Immortal and Kate moment. So when we go to the GDA and basically we see everyone is like basically splattered, like Samson doesn't look good. Shapesmith has been ripped in half and is laying on the ground, my beautiful Shapesmith. And like, I love as well, like this Mark is like shit talking. Sorry, this Invincible is like shit talking about his death. And he's like, I love how evil he is. And like,
That's a
credit
pretty
to
accurate impression of what's his face.
yes,
Like,
of Shapesmith. That's
yeah,
exactly the way that he would talk about his own body. But props to Stephen Yeun, right, for like embodying all of these different
yeah.
invincibles. Man, he absolutely nailed it. But this fight, Ian, when like he decapitates Immortal and like his head rolls over and just looks at Kate, like as she's like, oh, and he throws like his head through Kate's body as well.
I there that was a moment when I was like, all right, we're getting a little 80s horror movie here because like why would that head go through her body and not just like
Right.
smoosh into her? But I will say the only thing I like looked at the number on her chest. So then I was like, all
Mm,
right, we're good. I know Immortal can come back. That says number 4, not number
yeah.
0. We're good. So like that was like the least of my worries because I like made notice and I was like, great, they're good. Everyone else, however,
Hmm.
like
Yeah.
Shapesmith, I was like, I wonder, I mean, granted, we know he's not dead, but I was
Right.
like, I wonder if that voice actor couldn't come back, and that's why we don't see him die because like his character was going to die anyway, and then the actor
Mm.
couldn't come back to do like 2 lines. But then I learned I was incorrect, which I was happy to be incorrect.
You know what's Sam? Because like, we've seen like the impact of like all of the heroes and the Guardians been wiped out, right? Like that's what we saw in season one. So like even when you saw Samson laying there, I was like, well, he clearly looks dead.
Yeah,
Smith is basically in half. And like, we know the immortal can come back. So you're right. Like this is what I mean about the law. Like I love that it leans into the invincible law, like you said straight away there, Ian, which is perfect, fantastic, which is like Kate at the number 4 in her chest, we know there's always the 0. So if something's happening to 0, we know that shit's getting very real.
right,
Yeah.
right.
And like as we say, Immortal, like, we learned in the last, I think it was 2 episodes ago, when like Mark says, oh, like when he killed the Immortal in like that other dimension, when he's like, oh, separate his body parts and that'll stop him from coming back. He's basically like the judge in Buffy, essentially, right? But yeah, but Jesus, like that head going through Kate and then like his head like rolling over, like decapitated head and just looking at her on the ground. I was like, fucking hell. But again, I love when it leans into the darkness of like, this is what it would be when superheroes turn bad, right?
Yeah, yeah. Um, robot, that still was the GDA facility, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So remember it's like Team's base, which is a GDA facility. So
Okay.
like right. So like Ruddy obviously does pull them out of like robot as well. But yes, essentially it's like remember when they went back to like the team type base, and it's like
Yeah.
it's still like a facility of like, the Guardians, but like it's separate from where the others were, like where Immortal and Kate and everyone were.
All right.
But yeah, I like as well, like we see a quick flash. I like that we're getting like quick flashes of like the other characters just to check in on like what's happening with them in the chaos. So like they're not dominating the narrative, but it's just giving us a quick like peek into, oh, this person's here. So like, Debbie is with Paul. We later find out, she is actually at Paul's house. Like that's where she went. But I like that, like when we get a flash of that later on, when like we hear like one of the Invincibles inside saying like, "Mom, I'm really hurt. Like, mom, help me." And then he's like, "Oh, she's not here," and like blasts out of the roof. But yeah, we find out obviously later on she's with Paul, which thank God, because I could not stand out Debbie dying. Absolutely not.
And also just like don't break a limb of hers again.
I know, honestly, that poor woman. Um, but yeah, like again, like another flash of like Rick and William like running, and I like that we got to see this again. I was worried. I thought we were going to lose William for a second when that wall falls on him, right?
I I was like genuinely really worried. And I saw, you know how sometimes if you see something that you think is a spoiler, but like you've already grazed over it, but you like scroll real quick.
Hmm.
I actually thought because I saw a tweet about William and Mark and like
Right,
something about William, and I was like, oh no, if he dies, I don't want it to be spoiled. And then when that happened, I was like, oh, that thing I saw must have been about his death. And then thankfully that was
right,
not the case. But that's like my brain was like, I remember I saw something about William that was upsetting. Maybe this is what it is, and he's dead. But quickly it
right.
wasn't.
And again, like it could have happened, right? Because we had like William's birthday, and we've had like Mark hanging out with William and Rick, and like we had a lot. Even in season one, we had a lot of like William, like when Rick was obviously being changed over by like D.A. Sinclair. So like if he'd gone, like we've had a lot of William to love and feel that impact if he did
Yeah.
go. But thank God he didn't, because I love William and Rick together. Like I love it. And I like
Yeah.
as well, like this is a nice moment for Rick, like saving him, because we haven't really, he's gone through that trauma of like
Yes.
losing himself. Whereas this is him now thinking, oh, actually, yes, I lost a lot of myself, but I've got these powers that I can still use to save people. So I like to see him save
I
William.
didn't even realize that he like still had any powers until he did that. And I was like, oh good, he does have powers. Great. That's
Yeah.
useful.
And William's got that hot, strong boyfriend to look after him. So, we love that for William.
He deserves.
But okay, we're building up to it. So brace yourselves, everyone, because we're getting to Rex. So we go to the team base. Now, this is what we are talking about before. Like Ruddy and Bulletproof are basically, trying to fight this Invincible, and like, at the end of the day, they're not going to be able to defeat him. Like they know that. Like Bulletproof is like putting up, a bit of a fight, but like realistically, he's the strongest one there of like a really badly injured group.
Right. Yeah.
Like, he's more of a distraction than anything else. But oh man, like I just felt this in my gut. Like when it was building up to like when Rex is like, look, like just Bulletproof, get everyone out of here. Like I've got a plan, I can distract him. And he's like, are you sure? He's like, yeah, just go. And then like Bulletproof takes everybody away. And oh god, just this moment, Ian, like I was gutted. I could just feel it coming, feel it coming, feel it coming. And like obviously, like Rex has got like that big gash like in his side where literally his like stomach, his side is open. And then, he's throwing everything at this Invincible. Like, all of his explosions, he tries to blow up the ground. Obviously, like that Invincible flies up. It's just like, what are you doing? And when he just grabbed him by the neck and like he's talking to him and taunting him, just saying, I could just pop your head right here, right now. And all of that. I'm like, oh man. And like, did you know what he was doing when he put his hand like inside of his body? Like, did you think he was going to do what he does?
What I thought was because I was thinking of this episode reminded me a lot of the really sad X-Men 97 episode where Gambit dies. So I thought he was going to pull out like a bone or like a part of his body and shove it in Invincible's mouth. That's what that because I was like, well, it doesn't seem like exploding Invincible because he like does the thing where he like blows up the ground and it kind of does nothing.
Right.
So I was like, I wonder if he has to put it in him to like explode him from the inside. So I thought he was gonna like break off a bone and shove it like in him, and that's how he's gonna kill him. But kind of same point.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. Just rather than doing that and kind of somehow maybe surviving, like just does it to himself. But oh man, I was so gutted. Like,
I was really glad that at least it did kill that Invincible because it would have
yes,
been like for nothing if it
yeah,
hadn't. And for me, that would have undercut it because if it's like, oh, Rex did all that and it did nothing. Like I was really worried we are gonna see that Invincible like flying out and laughing, being like, oh well, whatever. But I was glad at least like even though I was like, well, he didn't die any of the other times he exploded. Why would he die this time? Great, kill him. If we have to kill Rex, it's like I always say with Gale Weathers in Scream,
Mhm.
if I had to write a death scene for Gale, I would have it be she's killing Ghostface. Like
Mhm.
she has her gun and she shoots him as she's dying and kills him. Like I it would need to be something like that. So I was
Right.
glad if Rex had to go out, at least it was like he did kind of save everyone
Right.
from that
Yeah.
facility at least, or from that specific mark.
Right. And you're right, like we've seen so many times in media when like, someone has died and it's kind of like the next episode rewrites it so it's all for nothing. Agatha
Yeah.
all along.
Yeah.
And then like even like Scream, as you were saying, like Scream 6, which, that scene with Gail is fantastic. Like, don't get me wrong, it's one of the best scenes in that movie, which I'm not a big fan of.
Yeah.
But and it kind of like seemingly looked like that was going to be Gail's death. But I love that we had a big fight with Ghostface before that happened, and it made it more meaningful. It wasn't just like, I mean, one of the biggest ones, I guess, is 24 when David Palmer randomly dies at the start of season 5. I don't know if you ever watched that, Ian, but it's just like gunshot through the window, dead. And it's
Mhm.
like, it's just, I mean, to be fair, Invincible is quite a cruel world. So,
Yeah.
like, if like Rex did do that and that Invincible did survive, like it wouldn't have been totally out of tone of the show.
But I still wouldn't have liked it.
No,
Yeah.
100%. That's what I was going to say. But as a fan, you would have been like, oh man, like Rex did that for nothing. Agatha all along. But
It's funny, Veronica. Did you ever watch Veronica Mars?
didn't. It's my one blind spot.
I mean, I know you would like it. They do that with Charisma Carpenter in season because she plays like a reoccurring character.
Right.
And in season 3, she like dies off screen, and it's so weird. And the whole season, I'm like, well, she's gonna come back because we didn't see her body dead, but no, she's dead. It's like some guy goes in a room and shoots her, and you just see from the outside. And so,
Mm,
right, like you're like, I was like, well, she's not dead, right? Because that would be a really lame way for her
right.
to go out. But no, her character is like dead.
Oh man, and like Charisma Carpenter's like killed in like unjust ways quite
I
often in her
know.
shows, right? Can we talk Angel? But again, like
God.
what I will say about that is like at least we get the episode of You're Welcome when like at
Yeah,
least
yeah,
we
yeah,
get like a last big and an
yeah,
incredible episode before we find out that she's gone. Same as Darla, right? Like and when she stakes herself, like that episode for me, like Lullaby, right?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
I absolutely love that episode. And I know like certain people that we talk to fans of that episode, but for like losing Darla. But I always say like if we have to lose a character, make it really just and really
And
meaningful.
I even did that watch along with Julie Benz, and even she said that she loved that end. Like that's
Right.
why she wanted to do the watch along because she hadn't rewatched that episode, but
All right.
she like genuinely was like, no, I love this, and I love that this is how Darla goes out. Like
Mhm.
it was like one of her favorite episodes to do, understandably so, because her character gets so much to do.
Yes. And we see so many shades of that character in that one episode as well. Like that scene when she's talking to Angel and it's raining and like she's laying on the ground and just she's sacrificing herself so the sun can be, it's just for me, it's beautiful and like
Yeah.
such a meaningful moment to let something else happen. And that's kind of what we get here where Rex knows he's going to die, but he's like, you know what? I'm going to blow up my own skeleton to kill you, motherfucker. And
Yeah.
that's literally what we get. So like, oh, like, at least now we have like less than 18 Invincibles, right? Like so we get a group of about what, like 10 of them at the end. But
Yeah.
and yeah, so Rex took one of them out, but I'm just gutted to see him go.
And when we
Absolutely
saw
gutted.
what's her face, I keep wanting to say Kate. Her name is not Kate. His girlfriend,
Oh, Ray.
Ray, when we see her
Right.
in the car and she like
Oh.
realizes, I was like, ugh.
And then that needle drop, Ian, of Billie Eilish, like when the party's over. Oh my God. Like,
And
I
just like
mean,
spanning, showing all these like fucking massacred heroes. I was like, oh
right. I
god.
know, like this. I mean, the montage was great. Like, and then
Yeah, yeah.
that needle drop as well to get Billie Eilish on here, perfect. But yes, that montage of like just seeing around the world of like the destruction, all the heroes dead, some of the Invincibles dead as well. Oh, and
I
you can't.
actually paused it because I was worried. I was like, I don't want the episode to end like this. And I was really glad that actually it was only like 20 minutes in or 25
Right.
minutes in.
I was actually I was going to say that it's like nice that like the episode could have ended there, but like the fact that we got, I don't know, day 3, and I'm
Yeah,
like, oh, like thank God. I mean, in a way, I'm like, thank God, and in another way, I'm like, oh God, there's more.
I know.
Like who else are we gonna lose? But yeah, that needle drop, man, like perfect song choice, like great montage, and it leads into this, which I love too. We're going into day 3 now. I loved this shot of when, like, you see the world has basically been fucked. But I love the shot of like behind the Invincibles and like the location keeps changing and it's the different Invincible that flashes up. I thought that was so fucking cool. Just because it's them looking at like the destruction that they've done and just gloating in it. And it's
Yeah.
such a powerful shot. Like every time you saw it, I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I liked seeing I feel like I kind of know where they're going with setting up these other Invincibles. And I did appreciate a little bit. Wait, is this the scene? Am I jumping ahead? Yeah, no, no, this is the scene when Angstrom
Mhm.
comes to talk to them.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
did like when they're above the house and like one of them is like, "Oh, I love killing her. I want to do it again." And one of the other ones is like, "Not all of us killed our mom. I
Hmm.
miss this place."
Right.
And I appreciated, I mean, granted they're all evil and they murdered a bunch of people, but I was like, "Okay, at least we're not going like they're all not cartoonishly evil like some of them are like, no, like that one I assumed maybe the death of his mom is what set him off to
Right.
be villain. And I kind of like that we were like showing different ways they got to that point.
Same. Like it's nice that they're not all just like, generic evil Mark,
Yeah.
right? Essentially
Yeah.
like those different layers to them. And like there's one of them even says like I miss William, like
Yeah.
another one like misses his
Yes.
friend. So that was really cool. And yeah, like that one, I think he was like the like blue covered face
Yeah.
one. And he just says, "Oh, I want to when this is over, I want to take her back with me because I miss my mom." And like that was really cool. Again, it's the brilliant writing of this show that we love where
Yeah.
it's not just like, and we've said this from the start, Ian, it's for all that it is a comic book series, sometimes it's so anti-comic book tropes, and that's what
Yeah.
I really like about it. So this would have been so easy just to have like, who was it, like the Doom Squad or something? Like it would have been so easy to lean into that. But I do
Yeah.
love these little moments that we get when we're like, oh, that's why he's here, not just to gloat and destroy
Yeah.
things, right?
Yeah. No, I like that. Where is the place that Angstrom sends them? I was like,
Oh, it's the desert world. So where like him and Mark fought.
okay, that's what I
Yeah.
thought, but I wasn't. I was like, is that where Mark left
Right.
him?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So it was there, yeah. But yeah, like I like as well that they all like because they all are evil. I like that they turn on Angstrom and they're just like, oh, actually, no, we could do like they're like, we're not taking orders from you, dickhead. Like,
Yeah.
and like I like that feeling of, oh fuck. So at that moment I was like, if they all beat Angstrom to death, that'll be yeah, will I care about Angstrom? No. But it'll be interesting to see where they go with that. But obviously,
Yeah.
yeah, as you said, Ian, he sends them all to the desert world, which is where Mark left them for dead. Um, now this next scene, oh, like Mark and Cecil, like it still drives me nuts. I'm like, Mark, come on, Cecil is on your side, and like even later on when he says that, obviously we'll get to that part later. But so obviously Mark is visiting the Even Hospital. Cecil walks in, says like, oh, checking in. He's like, well, look, we really need you out there, and Mark is still very much like, I'm not going to leave her. Like I'm going to stay here with her, and he's like, oh, we found Angstrom, and like Mark's like, fuck, right, okay, let's go. And I'm pleased, like in the last episode, I think it was, we saw like Mark having that ability when he was like, no, no, other people can handle this. I'm going to stay and like enjoy time with my
Yeah.
friends or whatever. And I'm pleased, like at this point, he's like, oh no, fuck, you found Angstrom, right? I need to go. Bye, and like quickly
Same.
goes. Now this fight with Mark and Angstrom, I really loved it, Ian. And straight away, the first thing I was thinking was like, if Mark starts getting thrown around in different portals again, I'm going to rip my own head off because like season two, we saw that, right? Where like, he's
Yeah.
been thrown in all different dimensions, the last fight scene. And like, it was cool, but like it went on for way too long. But I like here that we see he's learned from those mistakes. So every time Angstrom threw a portal up, he was like, nope, stopped himself and threw
Yeah.
like back. And like even Angstrom's like, oh, so you learned. And like, I'm pleased that we see that with Mark.
I will say I still felt a little bit like I don't buy that these orbs are pushing Mark back that much. Like
Right.
I didn't buy that because we just saw Mark can like level a building. He can punch through people. So I a little bit there. I was like, can he just be like whoop and like stop these things and
Right.
punch Andrew's head off?
Mm.
But I understand for the purposes of a fight, if that was every fight, they would all be 2 seconds.
Right, like literally, yeah. But yeah, I do like for me it's a strength moment with Mark where like, he nearly gets pushed into the portal by like and I mean it looks like a beast at one point. It looks like the Black Mist monster from Lost at one point,
Yeah.
like just coming out of the portal. And I like that Angstrom's throwing everything at him and like it's still not enough. And Mark does blast forward and grab him. And Oliver, when he appears, completely right. Oliver is in the right when he's like, look, you've got him now, Mark, kill him. Kill him. Completely right. Like, look at everything that he's caused here. He's murdered thousands, billions of people on the earth. Fucking kill him.
And
And like,
I was glad that because I was like, oh, now Mark's gonna say he can't kill him just
yeah,
because Oliver's there. I was glad that it was like he paused, and that's why Angstrom got away, not because he was like, well, I can't do this now in front of us. It was like, no, fucking kill him. Like,
Yeah. And like, yeah, as you said, like, and I love that Mark's like, well, you leave me no other choice. And he was
yeah,
about to, like, he was literally about to snap his neck before obviously Angstrom portals himself out of there. And I do like that he gets his arm chopped off. Like, Mark grabs his arm as the portal shuts and rips it off. Angstrom very quickly goes back to see the technicians. They're like, no, basically, we won't destroy your arm, and then they're like, look, you dishonored like our agreement, so you work for us now. And he's like, what? I'm like, okay, bye, Angstrom, whatever. But then, yeah, like, oh, like, just going back to look over the city here, like, this is when, like, Mark and Oliver are, like, going around and, like, helping in the rescue mission, right? And I do like this, but at the same time, it's, like, killing Mark when, like, every time they lift up rubble, they see dead bodies. Every time they go and save somebody, they're badly injured. And it's, like, it's playing on Mark's mind the whole time. But, yeah, like, and this is what I was talking about before, like, the Mark and Cecil thing. Like, oh, so he goes back to see Even Hospital. And like, I've got in my notes there, Mark should have killed Angstrom, and he knows that. And like, even Cecil says, you can't blame yourself for being a good person, Mark, which
yeah,
is true. Like, it's absolutely true.
yeah.
Like, and Cecil says, like, and I love this about Cecil, where he's like, bigger picture all the time. And he's like, look, let's go. And he says, like, look, we'll rebuild, we'll prepare again. Like, we did it here. Like, yes, we lost loads, but we stopped it from happening, so
Yeah.
like we will rebuild, we'll do it again. We find out like Debbie was at Paul's house the whole time, and he tells Mark that, 'cause Mark obviously is quite shocked to hear that. And when Cecil even says to Mark, like, look, we could use your help with Oliver to like clean up New York, and like he's like, oh no, I'm still not working with you. It's like, fucking hell, Mark, bigger picture here, man. What is Cecil doing so wrong right now? He's trying to restore everything.
I put that I was like annoyed that Mark was going back into brat mode, because it's like, this is just like not the time. And like, Cecil clearly is, I feel like Cecil's clearly the only one. I guess like Mark has the strength, right? Mark is the one with
Yes.
the strength to fight, but Cecil has like all the other amenities to like help with this kind of fight.
Right.
So even if Mark was like, well, I don't trust you, but all right, cool. Like,
Right.
I don't know. I feel like it would have made sense if Mark had said yes, because like also like the Cecil even says, it's because you did stand up to me. That's
Yeah.
why, you know.
Right, later on, yeah. And I do, and at the end of the day, like, Cecil has every right to be a fucking dick to Mark and could just be like, no, I try to help you, fuck off. Like, and he's not, because again, he knows Mark is one of, if not his greatest asset right now. But also, like, he's always kind of looked out for Mark, just as the way he's looked out for Debbie, and looked out for like the family, like around Omniman. So like, he has every right to tell him where to go, but at the same time, as we've said a million times about Cecil, he's always like 3 steps
Yeah.
ahead, because he knows, no, in the long run, in the long game, I'm going to need Mark again. But yeah, obviously Mark goes to see Oliver. He gives him a hug, helping to clean up the streets. Powerplex decides, oh yeah, I'm going to attack you. And like, that's the point where, you said Oliver punches Powerplex. I fucking loved it. I was like, yes, that's exactly what he deserved.
Yeah. I just like, give me a break. Like, get this guy out of here.
Yeah, literally. Just him like mouthing off again, like saying, oh, it's all their fault and blah, 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 blah. And just, I'm like, all right, just get on with it. Like, just, and I'm pleased, like, he just gets dealt with. He's like such a minor thing compared to everything that's happened. I'm like,
Right.
Powerplex, my dude, the whole like city has been flattened. Use those powers to help people right now.
And like, did you learn nothing from you killing your wife and child? Oh, you didn't. Great, cool. Like,
Exactly. Yeah, you'd think like seeing the bodies around him would be triggering, like all of these. And I know, like, he's probably thinking, oh, look, like I was right. It's all invincible,
right,
blah, blah, blah,
yeah.
blah. But like other invincibles versus the Mark who is helping people in front of your eyes right now, like, open your
Yeah.
eyes, dude. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
So again, like we go back to Mark and Eve in the hospital. He's kind of saying he's talking to Eve while she's knocked out, and he's just saying how he still feels like this is all of his fault, and he's saying like Powerplex was right, like it is all my fault. Which, all right. And then Eve's parents arrive, Ian's favorite characters. And like, I even got my notes like, oh, so now her dad cares about her, because he had every reason in the past to just say, look, fuck off. We don't want your help anymore. We don't want your charity. But I did like when Betsy like catches Mark outside and like is telling
Yep.
like, him about like Eve's friend Valerie, which I said earlier, like Ian and I covered the Adam Eve episode. We saw Valerie in that episode. But that
I
moment
did
of,
not remember that was her, honestly.
yeah, yeah, that was her. But that look on Mark's face when he's like, oh, like Valerie's dead and yet my daughter is still laying here alive. And like that look on Mark's face just cuts you, right?
Well, and I was glad she verbalized what Mark needed to hear from someone that he knew wasn't trying to placate him, because I forgot that Mark has a secret identity when she was like, "Oh, do you know she has superpowers?" I was like, "Wait, oh, she doesn't know this is Invincible. She thinks he's just like a regular guy." But I was glad that she, on top of saying like she's dead, Eve isn't, she says like it could have been much worse for my daughter. And I was like, yes, please say that to Mark, because Mark needs to hear something like that.
Absolutely. Because Mark was right there with her, like when that happened. And Mark, essentially saved her and got her to the hospital. So, like, from her parents as well, the people who Mark hasn't met yet, the first thing he's hearing, like, I mean, the dad's a dick, whatever.
Aside, yeah.
But if aside from that, but the first thing he's hearing like that from the mother who he hasn't met yet is absolutely the first impression and first thing he needed to hear. So that was
Yes.
her almost thanking him without directly saying thank you, which is what he
Yeah.
needed.
Agreed.
Yeah, we got a very quick flash of like, so basically we find out Immortal is alive. He's been brought back. His head has been reattached. And he says to Kate that, he basically wants to quit and start a family with her, which she agrees to, which is interesting. We're getting this theme of like heroes wanting to step away, right? Where we get Rey and then like Eve did that for a while when she went and did her own thing in season 2. And then we get these guys are leaving. So it's interesting. I just wonder going forward, like, will it be, what you and I said, Ian, where like Rex and Rhea could never really step away from it all because they have lives of superheroes, like they have those powers. So it'll be interesting to see how long they do step away from the fray, whether they do come back pretty quickly.
Yeah, I agree.
But yes, and then kind of going up to the final here. So like this is what you were talking about before, Ian, where Cecil's talking to the Guardians and he has to fill them in and just says like, look, by the way, like Rex is dead. And like that's how Mark finds out. And he's like, whoa, hold on, what? And then that's when Cecil says to him, look, Mark, like I want you to lead the Guardians. And Mark's like, what? Like, absolutely not. Like, I'm not ready for that. And he says, like, look, we've had our differences, but it's because you stood up to me. You challenged me. You're the right person to lead the Guardians, Mark. Like, it should be you. And again, Mark's still being a bit of a bitch about it and is like, no, like, and like, I hate as well, Cecil has been so kind to him here when he's like, look, I know we haven't always seen eye to eye, but I'm always here if you ever need to talk, Mark. I'm always here. And again, Cecil has every right to say to him, fuck off. Like,
He does. Every right.
every single right. But I do like that Mark does say, oh, by the way, thank you. Like, at least
Same.
we got that because, like I couldn't have stood like Mark just being the way he is with Cecil, like constantly, because if all the things, like all the kind of beef that Mark's had against Cecil, now is the time when that should be repaired after everything they've been doing together, right?
Yes. I was really, really glad that, like, I was really annoyed at Mark when he was just like, you're the last person I want to talk to. I was like, Mark, stop doing. And then I was really glad when he was like, but thank you. Like, I just was like, it felt a little bit of a relief. So I was like, okay, Mark's not being a total like jackass.
Right.
Because like just saying like, I don't really want to talk to you about this right now. That's understandable if it's like he just went through this terrible thing.
Right.
It's okay to be like, I don't want to talk about this with you, but I appreciate it. That's a fully normal reaction. And I was glad that that was the reaction Mark was having.
Right. Exactly. It reminded me a little bit of, in season 5 of Buffy when like Buffy obviously tricks Spike into thinking that she's the Buffy bot and it turns out to not being like, and then she walks away and says, oh, but what you did for me and Dawn, I appreciate, like it reminded me a little bit of that moment. And it's nice to see that in characters, for all that, like Mark annoys me with his anger with Cecil. I get where he's coming from to a degree.
Right.
But at the same time, I like that he's got that, in hindsight to reflect and say, oh, by the way, thank you, because he needed to, right?
Yes.
Jesus. So then, okay. This ending. So this, Ian, is a huge comic book moment. So like people went nuts when this happened because this is what people have been waiting for, this character in particular. So Mark is in the city lifting rubble, doing the rescue mission. And then who arrives down to Earth?
The Viltrumite named Conquest.
Correct.
I said somewhere in my notes. I was like, Jesus fucking Christ, can Mark get a break? And then that's when I remembered you telling me there was only 2 episodes left, like earlier in the week. And I was like, oh shit, we're going directly into the finale after this. Fuck.
Yeah, so Conquest is like a big character in like the comics, so it was cool to see him, like especially at the end here, because as you said, Ian, like this is taking us right into the final. So just when you think like, oh yeah, there's like time to relax and just chill a little bit here, then fucking Conquest arrives, who's a very powerful Viltrumite. And he says to Mark, like, you were given a mission, like to get the Earth ready for takeover, and like I love that Mark's just like, look, like, do you honestly think I'm bothered about this right now? And like straight when he says like, I'm pleased to hear actually because all I want to do is hit something as hard as I can. And I love that. I love the moment when like they're both like powering towards each other and then it just ends. No after credit scene. And
I
to be
know. I waited. I was like,
same. I was like, wait, are we going to get like, and I honestly thought like, are we going to see like Omni-Man and Alan like, look at Earth and then that would end or something? But
I thought so too. Yeah.
right. But yeah, I think it just because of so much that happened in this episode, they were like, look, just breathe,
Yeah.
relax. But yeah, what were your overall thoughts of this episode, kind of going through it all, Ian? And then what's your mark out of 10?
I would give this one a 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
I just love the episode. I thought because there is like in certain superhero stuff, sometimes so much action can get a little like, all right.
Hmm.
But like this felt so fast paced while also having moments of like Mark visiting Eve at the hospital, Mark and Cecil talking, Debbie and Oliver. So like while it was mostly action, we still had like character moments between that. So yeah, this was like peak superhero storytelling for me.
I honestly echo everything you've said, Ian. Like, as we said in the offset there, like this is an episode which could have easily been very messy because of how
Yeah.
chaotic it is, like so much happening. But the way it's structured, it had a great flow to it, like breaking it up into the days. And like you said, we had quieter moments alongside,
Yeah.
real brutal moments. Like a lot of big fights happen in this episode. And like normally the fights of like an Invincible episode are like one of the big moments of like a fight is a big
Yes.
moment of the
Yes.
episode. This whole episode is made up of big fights. And like yet all of them felt so impactful. But at the same time, like, just losing Rex, like still just sits on me. Like I'm going to be gutted to not see him anymore if we don't see him anymore going forward. And I like that, I kind of said this earlier on as well, but I like that, even though Angstrom came back, he was very much like, just a plot device to move
Yeah.
us along. It wasn't just like, let's focus on Angstrom and his journey. And all of it was kind of just like, all right, let's quickly move through this, which I liked.
Yes.
I appreciated that. But yeah, as far as like, as you said, Ian, like as far as Invincible episodes, as far as comic book storytelling goes, this for me is top tier. Like everything I love about this was fantastic, and I'm just, that ending as well, like gets me so pumped for like the finale because I'm like, oh man,
Has me
like
stressed for the finale.
right, because like we still know like these like less than 50 Viltrumites, pure bloods anyway, are going to be coming very soon, and then when Omni-Man and like Alan get down there with like the rest of the coalition, how that's going to look, and like I had 10 out of 10 as well. Like this for me is just everything I love about Invincible, doing it so damn well. Just I'm excited for the rest.
Yeah.
But all right, Ian, I want to say a big thank you again for jumping on and covering this episode. We have one episode left and then we are done of this season, which oh man, it's crazy. Like I love when it's back. I love being in it, but it feels like it goes by so quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah, so I'm just like, man, but I know, like, look, season 4 is happening. We've had confirmation. The actors are recording their stuff. We haven't got a date yet as to when it's coming out, but we have been told we haven't got to wait as long because Jesus Christ, like, we should have been on to season 5 by now, realistically.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's leave it with this thought. What's one thing you think is going to happen in the finale?
I think all the marks are going to come back and work with them to defeat the Viltrumite. I don't quite know how that's going to happen, but I feel like that is because we left that so open ended, and they were turning against Angstrom while they were being banished. I don't quite know how, but because also I feel like if they team up with the Viltrumites, then everyone's just dead because I don't know how we fix that problem. Even with Omni-Man and Alan there, I feel like, but I do feel like they are going to partake somehow.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. I definitely think that's going to happen. Like, I think it's probably going to be Omni-Man and Alan will be the ones that sway them. How that happens, I don't know. But I think that, but also, like, and this is, I don't know anything here. I'm just literally spitballing here, but I think maybe they will gather everyone and like they're obviously going to fight Conquest, right? Like that's going to happen. Maybe a few more Viltrumites will come down, but I think like they're going to get the whole army together, including like the rest of the coalition, right? With like that other elder Viltrumite guy and whoever else they've got on their side, Battle Beast if he comes back, and they say no, we need to go to Viltrum and nip this in the bud now. So like if they all travel to the planet and like sort it out, that would be really cool, especially if that was like the way they choose to end the series. That would be really interesting going into season 4. But I don't know. But yeah, just no more death, please. Can't lose any more important characters. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm super pumped for the finale. We're going to get a group of us on for the finale to talk all about it, which will be super fun. I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, Ian, thank you again so much for covering this episode. This was really cool. Thank you again so much for doing a lot of the episodes. It's been really fun doing this with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Tell everybody where they can find you online.
You can find me at Ian X Carlos on all social media platforms. You can find my podcast SlayerFest X90. You can find my podcast SlayerFest 98 at SlayerFest X98 on all social media platforms. Find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere else you get your podcasts. And you can find my horror podcast that I co-host with Zachary Patton Garcia at My Bloody Judy on all social media platforms and also on YouTube and Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
There you go, Ian, rattling off like a pro. So remember, all of these episodes are available to watch online, so you can come and see mine and Ian's faces. If you want to watch it on YouTube, just type in Last Week on Pod and you'll find us on there. But we are obviously available to listen on all streaming platforms, so again, listen wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to follow the podcast on social media, it's Last Week on Pod. Type that in on Instagram, X, whatever, you'll find it on there. If you want to follow me, I am at Straughan87 on all social media. Type that in, you'll find my face. And remember to give us a review as well, or leave a cheeky comment on Spotify. Give us 5 stars, or otherwise don't bother. But yes, and let us know what are your thoughts for the finale as well going into this, because it's super exciting and I'm super pumped to get to it. But yes, thank you again so much, Ian, and until next time, everyone, take care.